I am not going to get my shot. I hate having to get my shots. Hey, yo, shots make me nervous cause I don't know their purpose, so I'm not going to get my shot.
Don't be scared, I'm here to help you grow stronger. Shots can help prevent diseases, make you live longer. The problem is there are a lot of myths we have to conquer. Some people think that shots are harmful, but with every shot, we grow stronger.
My kid's a diamond in the rough. Don't wanna bring her harm, course she is alarmed. Gonna stick a needle in her arm. Lancet 98, did you see the statistic? Vaccines can make our kid autistic, don't risk it.
Yo, that paper has now been disproven. Falsified conclusions, all the data he was choosing, creating much confusion. We need to know the science, gotta act soon. Inject an activated virus, teach you're immune. It is a V-A-C-C-I-N-E, building of immunity. Antibodies function like a lock and key. They identify the sample virus, tag the disease. Eventually, a macrophage is sent to eat. It'll recognize the virus if you get the disease. Thanks to that, your body can defend with ease, cause your immune system built up the memories.
Remember me?
It says in parentheses, we know from history shots can prevent disease. You know smallpox was wiped out because of vaccines. So get your shots so we don't see a resurgency. Now that you have some food for thought, you should go ahead and get your shot. You know antibodies help defend against disease, so just go ahead and get your shot. This man can get his shots.
I need to use adult immunity. If you don't vaccinate, you will endanger me. Endanger me? Yes, I have immunodeficiency. Vaccinate because I can't defend against disease without shots.
See, this man has a tough plight. He can't get shots because his immune system can't fight. If healthy people vaccinate, the weaker succeed. Let's vaccinate the herd to help defend the people in need.
Okay. I'm not throwing away my shot. I'm still going to get my shot. I want to help my community improve herd immunity. I'm still going to get my shot.
I am not throwing away my shot. I'm still going to get my shots. And now that we know the purpose, we can do the world a service and go ahead and get our shots. Ayo, it's time to get your shot, time to get your shot. And I am not throwing away my, not throwing away my shot.
All right. Thank you so much. Welcome everyone who's here to watch Story Night. We thought we'd open it up a little bit differently this time with a video by whoever that was. They had their name on there, the Nueva Academy, a nice little science lesson for us all. The theme tonight is shot, which can refer to getting a vaccine. It can refer to taking your shot as Hamilton promised he would do. And Hamilton, you might remember, died from a gunshot. So it can apply to that as well. So we have a few storytellers tonight. First of all, I'll say we have Jose and Priya from the Kitsap Regional Library. They're here to join us. We have Nessa Goldman and Janae Sparks from Sequim, Washington, the banana belt of the Pacific Northwest. And we have Douglas Avery Jr., DJ Avery shows up on the screen that way. And we are joined by Allison Loris and Ian Logan. This is the first time they've been able to join us since we went online with Story Night. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Priya and Jose. They were going to talk about library programs, and then we'll go to our next phase of this. So Priya, take it away.
Cool, thanks, Steve. I'll share very briefly about some resources that KRL has to offer during this Black History Month. As we know, we're in February, and we're trying to share as many educational resources as possible to help us learn more about the Black community, about Black voices in literature, and have conversations about Black history. So I'm going to share real quick. It will be quicker than it was last time. Awesome. All right. So if you are interested in seeing what we have to offer in our catalog around Black history, around Black voices, Black authors, we have a lot to offer. And I'll have us just start at our online downloadable collection, which you can search in our general catalog on our website. To search specifically for ebooks and e-audiobooks, though, if you want to read on your device or listen to something, you'll go to krl.overdrive.com. Once you're here, just scroll down. We've got a book club pick for the month. Keep going. You'll see some curated reading lists, including children and teen Black voices and general adult Black voices. So you can scroll through, see a bunch of really cool titles, fiction and nonfiction, really interesting stories that we may not have come across if we are not part of the Black community. So this is a great place to start if you're interested in learning, deepening your understanding of some conversations around Black history. One more opportunity we have to discuss that is in our monthly program, the Anti-Racism Learning Circle, which is on our website over here. If you go to our website and just look at our catalog, it is, the calendar. It's the second Thursday of each month, or you can search in our site for Anti-Racism Learning Circle. This month, it's next Thursday. We'll be discussing hidden Black history. So we're gonna go over some Black historical figures that you may not have come across in your typical Black History Month lessons in school, or books that you've read, or news stories. We'll be sharing a few, but really we want to open up the floor. So if you have a Black historical figure who inspires you, that could be anyone from Bass Reeves, who was a sheriff way back when in the Wild West, to your grandma, who was just the neighborhood badass. I don't know, whatever you want to share about a Black historical figure that you want to share with your community, come join us. It's 5 o'clock next Thursday over Zoom. Details are on our website. Jose, would you like to add anything else?
Yes, I would like to show kind of the same, but on the catalog, like for physical books, so our users can also take advantage. I'm going to first thank you, Priya. Thank you, Steve. Hello, Allison. Hello, Nessa and Doug. Haven't seen you in a while. Well, just a month. So here's my desktop, and here's the catalog. Remember to log into the catalog. The address is quite different. It's like catalog.krl.org. It's very important that that distinction is made when you write that that address on the search bar. So after, I'm already logged in, but if not, you will need to input your library card. And I am suggesting tonight 2 queries. The first one will be Black history, because if you write Black history month, you're not going to find many, but Black history, and then you can have some resources. Actually, under that category, you can find 786 resources related to Black history. And remember to narrow your search. If you want the book like Super Now, available now, play with these tools and this narrow search that we have here, because sometimes you just like not find what you're looking for. And then the other query I'm going to suggest is African American history. And then you have, as you see, other kind of resources like more into the fiction, non-fiction area. And remember the same, try to check if you want them now, the type of material that you want to select. In this case, let's see about DVDs. Okay, we got a few here. So it's quite like a simple process, and putting a hold is super easy. Let's say that I am going to check out this DVD from March on, place a hold, select the branch. This is very important because Sylvan Way is the first branch, so you can get lost in. So remember that to make that distinction. So I would like to pick it up in downtown Bremerton this time. Submit request is placed. I'm going to cancel, so Priya, you have to do this tomorrow. So just and then once you're ready and you receive the email, it's very important that if the item is on hold, it has the hold shelf status. It's very important that you click over here and make the reservation. And yeah, it's a quite pretty straightforward process. And well, thank you very much.
I acknowledge that I was muted. Thank you, as always, to Jose and Priya for, and to everyone at the Kitsap Regional Library for your support of Story Night. I want to turn it over quickly to some empty chairs that I see up in Sequim. Is anybody going to scramble back? If not, we're going to have to do our wheel of names and just address things this way. Well, that's fun. It's our first glitch. There they are. Hi. We are ready for Nessa and Janae, Nessa Goldman and Janae Sparks. You might want to unmute yourself. Okay, you did. They host, as you might be aware, they host the Out Loud Story Slam up in Sequim. It's a live event much like ours. And you may not be aware that they are also radio stars now. So I want to give them an opportunity to talk about what they're up to, and then we'll get into our story. So please take it away, Nessa and Janae.
Thank
And
you.
by the way, Kim says hi to everybody.
Hi, Kim. So obviously during this pandemic and COVID, none of us really have known what to do. And we've been seeking different outlets. And we have taken from what you have laid forth with the library, and we were contacted by our library locally. And they asked us to do a story slam in conjunction with the radio. And so a couple weeks ago, we did 2020 is hindsight, hindsight in 2020. Yeah, because the last story slam we had in person was 2020 vision. We were so excited about that one last January in 2020. So we did hindsight 2020. And yes, what else are we doing now?
So we had 7 tellers, I think, on for that one, and now we
For
have one.
KSQM.
Yeah, for KSQM. So if you guys should get it, I think 91.5, and it's coming up on Monday. We're doing another one as a part of their Precious Memories series. So we've got 5 tellers this time. Last time we really took right after you, Steve. We even had trivia. This time around, I'm not sure if we're gonna get that together because we're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants. We're like, let's do it, get on the radio, and now we're just kind of making it up as we go. But we'll have 5 tellers on next Monday at 7 p.m. on KSQM, which you can stream on KSQM FM, and maybe we can share that when I eventually share that.
We broke the internet last time. We crashed their website. We had so many people logging on. It's amazing.
Excellent.
So yeah, you guys can check that out, and you'll hear some lovely stories that are connected to music and are great sentimental.
So is there a recording of the show that can be played later too?
No.
No, there is. There
there?
is. Yes. No. So actually I update. We have a website now. Here's another thing we did. We made a website, outloudstoryslam.com. And if you go on there, you can see our past virtual events from Zoom that we did record. And then our most recent radio show is on there as well without the music, I think. And then we're going to do another one. We'll have another recording that we can share. And those are, I think, YouTube links, but we've embedded them on the webpage. Or you can follow us on Facebook, Out Loud Story Slam.
That would be great because last time I remembered late. I'm not going to lie, I forgot. And I'm going to say I was busy. And I logged in right as you were signing off. You sounded great for the few words I heard. So I'm looking forward to listening to what you've done, and
Very fun.
I will tune in for the next show. So welcome everyone. It's good to see everyone here. Kim said hi to everybody. Kim also said, great to see Allison and Ian. I agree, we've missed you. For those of you who may not be aware, there are not so many people watching this that they wouldn't know this, but Allison has been one of the most steady and consistent storytellers at Story Night, and Ian has been along every time, and Ian has joined the stage often as well. But Allison has told more stories at Story Night than I have. So it's an honor to have you both back. So thank you. We are going to, I need to change the screen. And so anytime you kind of mess around with technology, it threatens to throw the things in a mess. But can you all see although I got to hit share. That's necessary. Can you all see the spinning wheel there? Okay. So what I'm going to do is we're going to base our next storyteller on the name that comes up first. So even if it's me, I was originally going to say I can't be first, but I'm going to go ahead and submit to that. So all I need to do is click, apparently, and you can hear it spinning. Oh, this is so exciting. And look at that. It was either going to be Allison or Ian, but we get Ian, so let me remove Ian from the wheel. Let me stop the sharing, and I'm going to ask you both to unmute, and I am going to spotlight you. So, Ian, welcome back. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm going to be doing something like this on Zoom in about a month or so with when our Latin convention comes back. So I'll tell you how that goes, doing a quiz game online via Zoom. So I was quite literal with the theme, as no surprise. Anyway, in middle school and even as early as grade school, my best friend was a boy named Chico. We went to the same school, of course, which I think is why we were friends. We got up to a little bit of mischief, nothing bad. I think the worst we did was cut class once in a while to go to the arcade. I don't know if they still have arcades, but you used to put quarters in machines and play games. After middle school, we drifted apart. We went to different high schools. In those days, it was harder to keep in touch than it is now. And if you don't live in the same neighborhood, go to the same school, you tend to lose touch with people. I think that happens for a lot of people with, our friends from the earliest school days. A few years passed. I was going to community college, living in my dad's house with his girlfriend and her family. Flipping through the paper one day, I saw a story. I didn't recognize the name in the story because he'd gone back to using his real name, Raphael, but it was about Chico, and he had died. I hadn't talked to him in probably about 4 years at this point, but apparently there'd been a party in Pioneer Square, Seattle. Somebody had been really high on something or other, and Raphael had tried to calm him down to, get everybody calmed down, and he was shot in the eye and died instantly. And this didn't really surprise me in one sense, because even if we got up to a little mischief, he was not at all a bad person. He was very sweet. And even if we were little boys and didn't want to admit, that you could be sweet, it just shone through. And at this point in my life, my parents were both alive. My grandparents were all alive. This was the first time that anyone I knew that I knew at the time or had known, the first time I'd heard about them dying. So put me in a bit of a fog for a while. A few days later, my dad noticed, because I was even moodier than usual for someone who was about 20. And I told him, and I thought that was the end of it. A couple nights later, about 10 at night, there was a knock at my bedroom door, and it was my mom. This would be surprising if you'd known my mom. It was unusual, and I would say unsafe for her to be driving at night. She lived up in Edmonds. We lived down in Seattle, but she obviously talked to my dad and heard this, and she felt that whatever else, she had to be there for me. And we went to the last exit in the U District, which was a really wonderful divey coffee shop once upon a time. And I don't remember anything we talked about, any words we said, but I always remember that she was there when I needed someone there. And she didn't even have to say anything, and just knowing she was there for me. And I've always been struck by that dichotomy, that these times of sadness, you sometimes find the greatest expressions of caring from other people, or find it in yourself. One of my favorite writers, Italo Calvino, in one of his stories, a character says, "Don't you understand that all these old stories end with the hero getting the girl or dying? it represents the continuity of life or the inevitability of death. That's it. But I'm coming to think it's not always that simple. It's not one or the other. It seems so often it's only in trying times, like what we're all going through now, that we find it in ourselves and in other people to let them know how much we care and how much we love each other. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that story. And I believe you're right. In the toughest of times, people really do show an ability to show up. And I'll leave it at that. Otherwise, I'm going to get into a story that's going to take too much time. So thank you, Ian. Great to see you again. We'll talk more about that later, but we'll go to our next storyteller, which means that we all have to witness it. And I make sure that we witness this wheel of names, because if you don't, you're going to accuse me of cheating, I think. And I guess even if you can't see it, I'm going to do it anyway and just report what happens. So we're back to the wheel of names. And by the way, before I do this, Kim is commenting tonight, and I'm going to repeat everything she says. So, because I don't know how the rest of you are looking at this, but Kim mentioned that she listened to the Out Loud Story Slam event, and so she said it was great. So props to you up in Sequim. Now I'm going to do the names. It says I'm screen sharing. Hopefully it's looking at the right screen, and it looks like we are going to hear from Janae Sparks. Okay, it's on. I thought it said Janae. Does anybody want to dispute that? Because it asked me if I wanted to remove Nessa, and I absentmindedly clicked yes. So next time we're leaving Janae on there, and when it goes on Janae next time, it'll be Nessa's turn. So we're prepared. We always have contingencies. But I'm going to put a spotlight on you. Wait, let's see. Where do I go for that? I did it last time.
You know, the thing I miss most about storytelling and story night is standing up.
Yeah, really?
Talk about that. Yeah, when you're telling a story, yeah, standing up. Yeah. No, I'm not standing. I was just saying. Okay.
All right. I think you are spotlit. So I'm turning the time over to you. Take it away, Janae.
Okay. Thank you. So I have 3 children. My daughter is the oldest. She's 25. And then I have a son who is 21. And the youngest son is 15 years old. But my daughter actually began life as my best friend's daughter. And from high school. My best friend was a young single mother at 20. She had accepted this blessing, and her enthusiasm did spread to me, but I was honored to be asked to be her godmother. And so when the baby was born, she was named Lana. And for the first couple of years, everything was amazing. My best friend earned her degree in college, and I got married. But after Lana turned 3, my best friend started changing. You know, she was gone more. We were babysitting all the time. It was very obvious that something else was going on. You see, my best friend, she grew up differently from me. She kind of grew up rough, and choosing the hard path of being a single mother at 20 years old was rife with emotional consequences. And life was getting really hard for them. And we tried to be there as much as we could, but it was pretty obvious. My best friend had turned to drugs, and it was really, really hard to watch that downward spiral. There was nothing we could do. And for quite some time, we were super concerned about Lana. And my best friend came to me and asked if we would take custody of her. And we absolutely agreed. We had always treated her as our own. She was our godchild. And yes, we welcomed her into our home. And there was just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. She was ours. But then I started watching my friend spiral out of control, and I started thinking to myself, she's got no reason now, right? We've taken her daughter. She has no reason to stay in present day. And I was young. I was 20 years old myself, and I started thinking that we maybe weren't making the right decision. So I got a hold of her, nailed her down, and was like, you know what? You need to take your daughter back. Right or wrong, I was young. That's what I did. And she took her daughter back. And for a while, things were great. It was probably about a year, but she didn't talk to me much. She had other friends that weren't judging her the way that I was. And I finally looked at my husband and I said, you need to go down there and check on them. We're in a really small town. They only lived a few blocks away. Go down there and check on them. She had shut off her phone again. It was around her birthday. She couldn't look me in the face, so I couldn't go down there. So he went down there and he checked on them, and everything seemed to be fine. And then the most surreal experience happened. Sitting in front of the TV, watching the 10 o'clock news, and I recognized a handgun laying in the middle of the street. And I start paying attention. There was an officer involved shooting in Gorst, and I'm looking at that gun. And I said, I know that gun. I know that gun. That's her gun. It was a custom pearl inlaid gun. And I was frantic. We immediately started calling all of our friends and asking if anybody had heard from her. And nobody had heard anything. And I swear it was the longest night of my life. Finally, in the morning, I just kept thinking to myself, where's Lana? Where's Lana? So we called my best friend's father, and he had just been notified by the police, and he was on his way out the door to pick up Lana. He was very, very confused. He said he would call us when he got back. And we paced the house all day. We were waiting for Grandpa Ed, is what we called him, to get back, and the hours just ticked by. Finally, around 4 o'clock, he got back with Lana. And he told us the story that the police gave him. It was so extremely, extremely hard to believe. And so I did what I do best. I compartmentalized, I put things in boxes, and I started an investigation of my own. I started poring over the police records and the photos, ballistics, and witness statements, and trying to figure out what happened. And this is kind of what I got. My best friend was traveling in a vehicle going down through Gorse that was speeding. The truck was pulled over and it smelled of marijuana, and the driver was arrested. According to Lana, the driver was taken away in pretty silver bracelets. She was 1 month away from her 6th birthday. So as the officer approached the passenger side, my best friend, a really, really bad decision, and grabbed the backpack that was sitting at her feet and decided to run with it. The officer picked her up and threw her on the ground, slammed her on the ground, and sat on her back for over 3 minutes. So this is where things get a little bit fuzzy, right? This man he's 6'2" and 220 pounds, and does not have a good record himself. He had only been back on the force from suspension for 3 weeks, being suspended for excessive force with someone else. So he's sitting on her back for 3 minutes, and she's got the backpack underneath her, and it's pinned because he's sitting on her. She's 5 foot, 100 pounds, soaking wet. She had only started recently carrying a gun because Lana's father had just recently got out of jail. And what I got is that he was sitting on her back, and she wouldn't let go of the backpack. It was pinned underneath her. And he tried to shoot her. But because he pressed the gun so hard against her back, the safety engaged. So he threw the gun away, grabbed his second gun at his ankle, and shot her in the back 3 times. All while Lana watched. Lana was present for the whole thing. So now don't get me wrong. What my best friend did that day was absolutely horrible. Why would you do that? Why would you carry marijuana when it was illegal with your child in the car? Why would you have a gun, backpack with drugs? Why would you get it and run? Nothing she did was correct, but also we need to remember the fact that she died for a product that is now legal in Washington state. And it just absolutely kills me. Absolutely. I found out why she was pulled over. She was pulled over because her roommate narked on her, said that she was going over to get a pound of weed. So she was pulled over as soon as she hit the Kitsap County line. Lana was going to have some really, really rough years ahead of her. Her grandfather, bless his heart, was the only one that was going to be there, and decided that he wanted to make a family for her. He got an internet bride, a Ukrainian bride. Didn't go so well. For years, we fought for custody, and my mom, every once in a while, she would look at me and she was like, Janae, you need to stop. And I was like, I can't stop. She's mine. She's my child at this point. And I'm not stopping until I have her, because I know that the best place for her is in my custody. And around the time that she was 11 and continued to run away from her grandfather's house and the internet bride, I put my foot down and I got full custody of Lana. Now I have 3 children. I went from 1 to 3 because I was pregnant at the time that the whole custody battle was going on. The years have sped by. My daughter is now a very happy and healthy young lady with a heart of gold. And she just had her first child. And I just pray that the circle can end there. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. That is powerful. And it's one that I would say probably needs to be repeated where, when or where possible. So thank you. And I assume you are going to tell that story again in other venues and the like. Yes.
Absolutely. And the story, it's hard because it's such an emotional one. This is only the second time I've told it. And yeah, it's very hard to tell, and I need to work on it a lot to get it to be where I can justify the telling, because it's such a pivotal part of my life.
Well, it got us tonight. So whatever work you do, it'll still have an impact, I'm sure. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. We're going deep tonight. I'm going to share my screen again. We're going to do our wheel of names. I don't mean to be do something trivial, but this is a nice, fair way to do it. And you'll notice, Nessa, that I actually did change it so that your name is on there. So you're not off the hook if it says Janae. So here we go. We're spinning the wheel. Our next storyteller is Douglas Avery Jr. You are up next. I am going to put the spotlight on you. And hey, that was supposed to be, okay. I have to do that over here. Again, I learned this, how I learn it. Well, this is strange. Okay. So if I go, I'm sorry, I'm talking as I do this. I'm a great host. All right. So Doug, I guess that was what I needed to do. Doug, welcome back. Thank you. I like your background. The floor is yours.
All right. Before I tell my story, I kind of want to lead with a little funny little tidbit based off of the video that we shared at the beginning of this. I remember being in, it was 5th or 6th grade and getting my MMR shot. And I was so freaked out by it that the nurse had to eventually call my mom into school. And it took my mom and a couple of janitors to hold me down just to get the shot in. And so it was, I remember that experience a long time ago. It's definitely not as traumatizing as an adult now to go and get your shot. So, my story is about shots, but it's about not taking them. the very first story that I told at story night was about me taking a literal shot at improving my life and moving from Connecticut to the state of Washington, and to make a better life for myself, a better life for my kids. And that to this day is probably the biggest shot that I've taken. And I'm happy to be where I'm at because I took that shot. I mean, it was a really big sacrifice. It was a really pivotal moment in my life to get to where I am right now. And um, but now I'm at this like crossroads. I've been out here over 8 years. I've been at my job about 8.5 years or so, and I'm I've taken little shots here and there at work. Like I tried to go out for a promotion. I did not succeed in getting that promotion. Um, little things like that. But I I have an issue where I start things and I can never fully pull the trigger on them. And this has been a thing with me for quite a while now, especially in the last few years. I have come to a point where it's like I want to start doing things for me that make me happy. I want to start investing in things that are worth my time, and you know, and I get all these like little tiny ideas, and I think, yeah, I can do that, um, and then I don't. A small example is I love movies, TV, pop culture. It's something I'm really into. I like talking about movies. I like fan theories. I like, discussing the oh my god moments and all that stuff. And I have a good 750 to 800 movies on my movie shelf. This is a thing that I really enjoy. And I thought to myself, I could start up a. I've seen this all over the place now. I could start up a web page. I can start a page, reviewing movies and talking about movies. And I went as far as to setting up a Facebook page, and I had a pass to go see movies whenever I wanted. And I was like, this is really good. This is something I could do. I can start this venture and really turn it into something. And it lasted a couple of months, and it fizzled right out. And I haven't touched it in about 3 years or so, maybe, yeah, about 3 years or so. This is a thing that I do. Um, Video games is another thing I really like. I love trivia. If I mean, if you guys could hear the way I answer my phone at work, my employees and are always wowed because I answer it like I'm hosting an episode of Wheel of Fortune or something. It's because that's just the demeanor that I am in. And I got to a point where I was like, I can marry these two things. I can marry my love for trivia with my love for video games. And I got this really cool idea to start a podcast, where it would be kind of like a blitz trivia thing while people are streaming their video games playing on Twitch. And I started working on it, and I started getting ideas, and I was like, hey, this is really something. I started pitching it to a couple of fellow gamers who were like, yeah, let me get on board with that. Yeah, let me beta test that with you when you get it rolling. And I started to feel good about it, and next thing I know, I'm putting my effort into work and raising the kids, and there it goes. I put that on the back burner, never fully pulled the trigger. So 2020 comes around, and the pandemic hits, and we all get quarantined, and we all get shut in, and there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do, nothing to distract me. And I think to myself, this is the perfect time. I'm going to pick a project. I'm going to start it. I'm going to finish it. I'm going to do something that's about me. I'm going to finally get to work on this podcast that, is something I know I want to do. And then it never happened. I started it and I never finished it. It's just something that I do in life. And now I have seen recently within the last year and heard Hamilton for the first time, and I was blown away by the music. I was blown away by the whole show, the score, the words, the cadence, everything just thumps in you, and it makes you want to get up and go. And then I heard the story and I read the history of how Hamilton came to be, and I was like, man, there's a guy who literally took his shot. And I wanted to draw inspiration from that, and I wanted to be that guy who is ready to take his own shot. And I think I'm just really trying to work up the courage to finally do something for me, which is the one thing I've heavily lacked over the years. And I'm just kind of hoping this year maybe I'll get up to it. Maybe I'll take my shot. That's my story.
Thank you, Doug. I've been inspired by Hamilton as well, and so what ends up happening a lot of times now, and I watched it a couple of times all the way through, and now I can tell you that on several occasions I've watched the first 2 songs, probably a dozen times. A good book. I've mentioned the book before, the War of Art. I recommend check it out from Kitsap Regional Library. I'm positive they have copies, and or buy it from a local bookseller, and whatever your definition of local is. So I will support that, but I will say local. Thank you, Doug, for telling your story. I actually, obviously, I think I can relate to it for lots of reasons. And when I spoke last month, I mentioned a lot of things I was going to do. I put my butt on the line and saying these are the things I'm going to do, and I can happily report that I've made some progress on those things, and I'll talk about myself later. Let's go back to sharing my screen again, and our wheel of names to hear from our next storyteller. And spin, 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 wheel, spin. And Nessa, there's no getting out of this. So let's remove Nessa's name from there, and let's stop the screen sharing, and let's spotlight. Where'd they? Oh wait, there they are. They were hiding from me. I'm going to. It wasn't it wasn't that you were hiding. It was that my screen was the way it was. So anyway, I'm going to turn my mic off and give the floor to Nessa Goldman. Please welcome Nessa Goldman.
Hi guys. All right. So I'm an avid hiker. I do a lot of backpacking on the weekends by myself most of the time. But I try not to go off trail too often by myself, because I think it's a good idea to have somebody else, not just to bounce my bad ideas off of, but like if something happens, they can at least let somebody know that something horrible has happened to me. And this is the attitude I go out with when I'm alone as well. But I wanted to do this hike this summer that goes from Upper Lena Lake through what's called the Putvin Traverse and down to the Lake of Angels, if you're familiar with any of these places in the Olympics. Basically connecting 2 kind of popular trails, but about 6,500 feet of elevation over 2 days. Strenuous, but you need to know what you're doing. But I do my research. So I read a bunch of reports. I downloaded all the routes off onto Gaia and had my maps, and checked in with some people who had done it recently who were like, oh, I didn't even need my micro spikes or an axe. It was beautiful. So I'm like, oh, great. It's middle of July. It's going to be a breeze. And I roped my friend Aria into joining me as well. And she was an experienced hiker too. She's done the PCT. It was a couple of years ago, but she's got that go-getter kind of attitude. And so I knew I was, in good company having her along on that journey. So if you recall the summer at all, it was, despite the COVID, it was actually really gorgeous. Most days were very clear. But of course, the first day that I go to set out on my hike, it's kind of socked in and a little foggy. And but that's not really a big issue, because the first day we're just getting up to Upper Lena Lake, and it was pretty, overcast the whole time there, but conditions were generally pretty good. And we're feeling like we're 2 tough birds. We've just hiked 4,000 feet and no big deal. Look at us just crushing it. and feeling really confident. So the next day, we're heading up. It's through what's called St. Peter's Gate. So you head across the Put-Vin Traverse, like kind of on this ridge, and then you basically are going up a steep mountain pass, but there's like a kind of like a saddle in between two peaks. And I've seen tons of photos, and I have, like I said, the GPS route. So kind of troubleshooting my way through that is I'm pretty experienced, so I should know when to turn around. Anyway, we hike through the day and we get up to a snowfield, and I was prepared for the snow. Like I had said, it was kind of soft. And when we get there, though, not only is the snow soft, but it's just blanketed in this dense fog, and we can't really see too far in front of us, but we've got this, false sense of security from the GPS route and a tenacious attitude to boot. So we continue up along through this kind of snowfield and up to the saddle is where we think we're going. And as we're going, the fog is getting thicker, and we can't get too far apart because we won't see each other if we get too much distance in between us. And I'm just kind of checking in on my friend. I get into a zone, like I really enjoy that zone. That's part of why I like hiking, is like just get into this focus and this flow where like I'm just thinking about putting one foot in front of the other. It's very meditative. But you got to check on your partner when you're hiking with someone. This is not a good story where I look good in the end, by the way, in case you're wondering. I learned a lot. But I look back at my friend and she's sobbing, and I'm like, are you okay? And she's, like I said, tenacious attitude too. And she's like, let's just keep going. We've got this. And I'm like, okay. But I should have been like, no, you're sobbing. We should stop and turn around. But I didn't. And so we continued until we got to this kind of rocky feature. And the problem with GPS maps is they don't really point out where rocky features are. And a millimeter on a phone app is not representative of where you are. And I basically kind of hiked out to these rocks. I like had Aria chill for a second. I go and I look, and I'm like, that's a cliff. That's a cliff over there. So I'm going to assume, and as this happens, if you've ever used a GPS, sometimes you're just kind of off, but it's not really off. I'm like, I think we're here. We're just going to keep going. So we did. Aria's crying. We continue. We make it to the top of what we think is St. Peter's Gate. Well, if St. Peter's Gate has two posts, we're on the post. And we've gone up way higher than we needed to ascend. And I scramble over the one side and I start looking around. And again, I cannot see. It is thick like pea soup, like 20 feet in front of me. I'm not really seeing. So I scramble back to Aria and I'm like, all right, we think about our options. Stay here, go down. Like there's no continuing at this point because it is so steep on the other side and we are so far off the mark that that's not an option. So we decide to turn back the way we came. Now, the problem with going down the way we came is that it is so steep and we're on snow and we don't have micro spikes or ice axes because I did my research and I didn't need those things. And we start going down and I can hear Aria kind of slipping when you're tired too, right? Like you just lose your wherewithal. And I was like, okay, if you're going to fall, you need to shout and let me know to get out of the way. She's like, okay. And we've kick stepped in, which means like you're literally kicking into the snow and like getting a good footprint in. And all of a sudden I just hear her yell, move! And I watch her shoot past me and out of sight. And I'm like, oh my God, I hope she stops. And I'm like, start to run, but I'm like, don't run. And I look down and I see rocks and I'm like, oh, thank God there's rocks. I'm like, oh shit, there's rocks. Because I'm realizing that's what my friend is hurtling towards. And luckily she stops really without much injury. And she loses her poles. And I have that thought, like I said, not to rush. And I walk down to her and I get her things. I'm like, we just need to be careful and keep going. And we continue down and we finally make it off the snowfield and we stop and we cook some ramen, which was maybe the best idea I've had all day long. If you're ever in like an endangered situation, hot food is like a life cure. It's just a miracle. And so we had that meal and we started to feel good. And we got back to kind of level ground on the traverse and found a campsite for the night. And I have to be honest, the feeling that I had in my tent that night when we were warm and safe in our sleeping bags is probably the closest to ecstasy I've ever come in my life. I was like, I remember saying to her, I was like, don't you just feel so warm and safe right now? It really is this inexplicable feeling. And you know, in hindsight, the next day, you know, we wake up and it's a glorious day. It's not only glorious because we're alive, but it's like the sun is shining, the sky is bright blue, and we can see all the way out to St. Peter's Gate where we were supposed to go through. And there's so many things that come to light. I mean, as we're going through it and having these constant epiphanies, I'm like, oh, we could have turned back when, you know, Arya was crying. We could have turned back when we got to the snowfield and realized we couldn't see anything. We could have turned back when we realized we weren't going to see anything from the beginning because we had a whole other day to get out of there. And we could have had all these contingency plans. We could have hiked out on the beautiful, clear, sunny day when we could see the pass that we were supposed to go through. And the worst part, for me at least, was that I, as a hiking partner, didn't even check on my friend. Like, I made sure she was okay, but I also, like, when you're in shock and you fall, like, she could have hit her head. I didn't check on my friend. I didn't assess her. Like, I made so many mistakes. I'm not proud of this trip. But I am very, very grateful for all of the lessons that I learned through it. And I'm grateful that my friend is still my friend. And as we hiked out on our way down, the whole way, like, we were like, you know, we were intact and we really had this feeling of like amazing appreciation. But what I found really interesting on the way down is, and it didn't happen on the way up, but every time we'd run past another couple of hikers, they'd be like, wow, you guys are going to backpack out here? And we're like, buddy, you have no idea. And not only that, I don't think they would say that to us if we were men or if there was even a man with us, but because we were two women, granted, we had done something very dumb, but because we were two women, they felt inclined to make these remarks to us. And I still haven't gone back, but it's only been a couple of months, and Arya and I hope to do it together again sometime soon. I learned a lot. Thanks, guys.
Wow. That is, as I said to Janae, I hope you will tell that story again, and in front of an audience.
Yes.
So you can hear everybody gasping. And that is well, great job. I'm glad you all made it, and I'll get over this at some point. You know, and I wanted to say, when you said that people were saying, wow, you're backpacking, it didn't occur to me, this is part of privilege. It didn't occur to me that they were saying that because you were women. I thought it was because of where you were, but now you're probably right. That's probably what
it that part a little bit at the end.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we're going to go to our next storyteller, and that's either going to be me or Allison. And I know who I hope it is, but I'm going to let the wheel tell the story. So here we go. Oh, I was hoping it would be me, but we're going to let the wheel dictate what we do here. So I'll be last, and I'll figure out a way to make that be okay. So let me put the spotlight on you, Allison, and give me 1 second to do that. And the floor.
Okay, first off, just to get in the mood, we ordered our dinner from Cloverleaf.
I had to unmute myself. Thank you for doing that. I've been thinking I want to be in touch with them to just say, are you going to want us back when we all can get back? Are you going to use?
They do.
Oh, they do.
When Ian went to pick up the food, he mentioned story night, and what's her name, Lindsay? She said, "Oh yeah, it's you."
Come back.
Come back. Well, after all of that tragedy and drama and hair-raising adventures, I don't have anything quite of that caliber, but I broke my ankle a couple months ago, and I had to wear this crazy boot, and I had a knee scooter. And we took a week in a yurt at Cape Disappointment State Park after Christmas. And we hadn't been to that park for a long time and discovered that the yurt we had taken was really, really far from the restroom. Had a couple of exhausting and painful trips on the knee scooter to get there. Mostly Ian just drove me. So we decided to take a little vacation, which we just got back from. We had 3 nights in Astoria in this little hotel we love that has no elevators, and you have to climb a flight and a half of stairs to get to the lobby. So that was kind of a celebration of my healed ankle and also some physical therapy. But before our 3 nights in Astoria, we spent another night in a yurt at Cape Disappointment. And this time I took care to get a yurt that was close to the restroom. However, it wasn't really close enough. We got there in pouring rain, after weeks of pouring rain, in the dark. And even though there was only one other yurt between the restroom and us, there was also a lot of water. The driveways and the roads, as well as the land, were all covered with water. And Ian went to the restroom using the light on his phone and came back with his Birkenstocks soaked. So then I wanted to go to the restroom and I said, let me wear your shoes because they're already wet and then we won't get another pair of shoes really wet. But because my ankle was recently healed, Ian didn't want me to go alone without a light, so he accompanied me. And we're picking our way across these puddles, stepping on what looks like firm dirt that turns out to be marsh that gives in this spongy sort of way and floods our feet with cold, muddy water. And at some point, I realized that what Ian was wearing to accompany me while I was wearing his shoes were my fluffy slippers. Got to the restroom, went back, and the slippers had rubber soles, but they were old. And so the rubber sole had kind of worn down at the heel, which meant that the entire foam interior was soaked with water. So I'm propping them up on the electric heater in the yurt, and Ian had another pair of shoes. I just had one pair of shoes and the slippers. So the next day we got Ian's Birkenstocks are still a little damp. My slippers are still very damp. I'm wearing my Birkenstocks. He's wearing his sneakers. And we go to Astoria, but we can't check into the hotel until 4 o'clock. So we had a really nice day. We drove around to a lot of old haunts that we're fond of. We got some coffee in Astoria. Then we drove out to Fort Stevens State Park, the Oregon side of the Columbia. And we drove through a lot of sweet little small towns, and I took lots of pictures. And on our way from Fort Stevens back to Astoria, because it's getting fairly close to when we can check in, we passed this Fred Meyer where we usually did our shopping if we were staying at Fort Stevens. And Ian says, hey, do you need anything from the store? I said, yeah, as a matter of fact. I need a new pair of slippers because these are shot. The end.
It took me a long time to unmute. I was cracking up there and I had stopped by the time I got off mute. That is great. That's a great way to bring the theme back to shot. So let me remove the spotlight. Thank you. Again, I can't say it enough. I'm thrilled that you're both back with us after. I mean,
Oh, thank you.
it was the last time we saw you was a year. No, I guess we saw you in March. But
We'll do it again now. I just didn't expect this to work very well, and we've all got a little Zoom fatigue, but
yes,
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, I know. I heard that term Zoom fatigue recently, and I'm like, yeah, people got to be tired of this. But you know what? I've been watching. We've got people watching. So, and it's not just Kim. So I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled with that. I'm gonna report on a couple of things before I tell my story. And my name is the only name on the wheel now, so I'm not gonna go ahead. I'm not gonna spin it. It would be fun, but there's no need. Last time I said a few things that I was going to do. I want to report on a couple of things. I did post another podcast episode for Story Night. So there is one new episode. I plan to keep doing that. I don't know how regular it's going to be right away, but that is happening. I had talked about another podcast. I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. I'm working on a book. That's the thing. I did start a newsletter as well. If you go to fieldofsteve.substack.com, I've written a couple of pieces on that site, and you can. Again, it's Field of Steve. I can leave the address in on the Story Night page on Facebook or somewhere else, or maybe in the I'll put it somewhere so you can find it. And I'm having fun, and that's the for me, that's the most important part of this is it fun? I don't know if you know the comedian Chris Larson. Most of you probably do. He's local. He's told stories at Story Night. He has a question. He's a member of the Rotary Club, and there's a 4-way test that they have. And at his Rotary, they've added a 5th test, which is, will it be fun? It doesn't mean that every service project they do has to be hilarious, but he wants to make sure that whatever they do, and I think the point is, if they're together, it usually is fun. I know for a fact that there have been unfun moments at the Rotary Club, but that's one of his tests, and so I'm having a good time with it, and it's been rewarding in that sense. So go subscribe, because it'll show up in your email. And it won't, you won't feel like it's spammy. You don't have to read everyone, but well, no, what's it going to matter if I say you do have to read it anyway? So let's see, something else. Oh, I meant to say that Nessa, after your story, our theme next month is Take a Hike. So that if you change your story,
I've got lots. Don't.
Okay.
I've made a lot of bad choices on hikes.
Okay. All right. So that'd be great. We don't have a theme yet announced for April. That I assume, Priya, you may know. It'll be based on the One Book One Community, I believe, in April. Or is that it's possible that could be pushed again?
It's still in the planning phase, but we'll keep it updated.
Okay. All right. Well, so everybody knows, next month, Take a Hike. April, it's a mystery. And that gives you all the more reason to check out the Facebook page and storynight.org. And I'll keep updating things there. So it would only be fair to spotlight on me as I tell my story, because I spotlighted on everybody else. So as you are probably aware, I never know with this crowd, but there is a big football game this Sunday. It is called the Super Bowl. Some are calling it the Super Spreader Bowl. Some of the Super Spreader event for this weekend. Please, if you're watching it, be safe. There's going to be a lot of Super Bowl parties in that. In conjunction with that, and I didn't come up with this story specifically because it is the Super Bowl this weekend, but my story does begin on a football field. When I was a senior in high school, I was standing on the Covina District Field. I had dreamt of playing there, and I'd been able to play there a little bit the year before when I was a junior. But those seniors, when I was a junior, they were really good, so there wasn't a lot of room for me. When I was a senior, I knew this was going to be my last year. I knew I wasn't ever going to be good enough to play in college. Even at the worst colleges. And if you're at the worst college, it probably isn't worth it to play. So I knew that this was going to be my last chance. And I had dreamt of this for years, of the Friday Night Lights. And we were playing a scrimmage, and scrimmage is a practice game against another school that you're not going to play again that season. And it's basically it's an opportunity to see how everybody performs against competition that isn't other guys on the team. I was a tight end, which is a receiver, which means that sometimes the quarterback throws the ball to a receiver. I was one of those people. And I was second string. The guy who was ahead of me was a year younger, but he was a good athlete. He would later get a contract to play professional baseball, which he did for a couple of weeks or maybe a month. But to even play it for a couple of weeks or a month, you've got to be a pretty good athlete. And he really was. But still, I was in contention. I was competing fairly okay against him. He was the obvious choice, but I was doing all right. And it came my turn to get a play called for me. They called a play where I would run deep. And I either fooled the defense, or the defense just completely messed up their coverage, because I found myself all alone. If he threw the ball to me, I wasn't going to have to fight anybody for it. And he did throw the ball to me. And it's a high arcing pass, and it's coming down. And time doesn't really speed up or slow down, but your brain does. And I had all kinds of thoughts going on in my head while this ball was falling my way. And some of it was, this is going to allow me to compete. This is going to allow me to prove that I can, even if I don't start, I can be relied on to play a lot. It also was like, there was also the doubts that I had, and the ball came down to my hands. It hit my hands and it hit the ground. And I knew in that moment that it could be my last chance to prove myself for that team, that they could rely on me. And as it turned out, it was. I didn't drop the ball because I couldn't catch it. I had made that catch a million times in practice before. It was the pressure of the moment. It was the pressure of what might happen later on, because if they relied on me later on, I might screw it up then. Better to screw it up now. These aren't conscious thoughts, but these are deep-seated things you do when you doubt yourself. And I doubted myself. 20 years later, I'm sitting in a room in our home in Alpine, Utah. I had graduated from college with a journalism degree, and I wasn't able to get a job right away, but then I took a job at a computer company, and I hated it. And towards the end of my time there, I did some freelance work for a local newspaper, and I did it for a few months, and it was fun. I was loving it, but I could also see that I really wasn't in line to get a full-time gig. So I quit, and I said, forget it, I'm going to go make money. And here's the thing, over the next 10 years, I never did. I never did make money. And so Diana saw me, I was looking for work in other places and trying to find a place to land. And she said, have you thought about going back to journalism? And I said, it doesn't pay well. And she said, okay. She took my word for it. And I saw this ad for this newspaper in Eugene, Oregon. And the ad said, in 5 years, newspaper reporters with 5 years experience make $45,000 a year. This was 1999, so I can be excused for being a little excited about $45,000 a year to some degree. But it was also way more than any money I had made over the last 10 years. And I thought, well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to getting freelance work with a newspaper, any newspaper I can find. And I'm going to prove myself and get myself hired. That's going to be my goal. So I took this dual track of looking for full-time work and papers who would hire me to write freelance. And so I rounded up the clips that I had from 10 years before, and I created a clip package with my resume, and I took them. There's essentially only 3 newspapers in Utah that were worth trying to work for. And one of them hired me to do a freelance gig to go cover some event, some convention. And I went and covered it, and I wrote about it, and they liked it, but they never ran it. And they didn't run, and they apologized to me for it. They just said they ran out of room. They paid me. So that was good. Another paper called and said, I saw your resume, I saw your clips, and I think you might be a fit here. We have a couple of openings. So I was looking for freelance work, and they were talking about a full-time job. And so I agreed to go interview with him. The interview was great. I was arrogant enough to express confidence that I could do the job, and humble enough to express that I could be coached. And it was a great conversation. They had one opening earmarked for somebody else, and the second one they were still debating. And he said, "Okay, well, let me stew on this, and I'll get back to you." And he got back to me, and he said, "We like you. We think you can write, but you've been out of the business for 10 years. So here's what we're going to do. We've never done this before. And I think papers do this a lot now. We're going to essentially give you what's akin to a tryout. We're going to assign a couple of stories to you and have you go cover them. And we'll see if this can be a good fit." And I said, "Great." And they assigned me the 2 stories. One was to go do a person on the street interview with people and ask them if they approved of Clinton's job performance after a successful bombing campaign in Kosovo. And this was in Utah. You might be aware that the Clintons were not popular in Utah. And so the question was, is anybody going to give him credit in a place like this? The second one was, this was Utah, which you might be reminded, and this was in the most religious part of a religious state. You might know that there is a predominant religion in the state of Utah. And I was assigned to write a story about why 2 Victoria's Secret stores had opened there within the last year. And because if you have a Victoria's Secret store, you have sexy women in underwear on huge posters in the windows. Didn't seem like it was the ideal fit for the community. Not that the editor was judging that, it just seemed a curious choice. And I said, "Okay, I'll do those jobs." So I got scared, and I sat on it for a couple of days, 2-3 days, and didn't do anything, and kept finding a way to procrastinate, which is what you do when you're afraid. Oh, I need to organize this a little better over here while I wait to figure out what I'm doing. And at one point, I woke up one morning and I remembered that moment from high school where the ball had been thrown to me and I had dropped it. And I didn't drop it because I couldn't catch it. I dropped it because I was afraid. And I said to myself, all right, I may fail at this, but I'm not going to drop the ball on purpose. I'm not going to drop the ball, and I'm not going to psych myself out. And it was right then that the editor called and said, "Yeah, we're just wondering where you are on this." And it happened that I had made a plan to go do this right after he called, and then he called right after that. So I could honestly say, "Yeah, I'm working on this." And I went and interviewed the people in the mall about the bombing campaign, and I went and interviewed some people about lingerie, and I called the company that makes the lingerie and talked to them. And I went to he asked me to come to the newsroom and write these stories. And I went, and I wrote it, and I wrote the Victoria's Secret story first. And he looked at it, and he changed the lead a little bit. And, but he said, "This is good." And they liked the other story too, the person on the street story. And the person on the street story ran first. I can't tell you what a rush that was to see my name in print. It was great, and it was scary. And then the Victoria's Secret story ran. And I learned a lot from those processes. And then he called and he says, "We're not going to offer you a full-time job at this point." And so the first thought is, did I fail? Well, no, I didn't fail. What they were going to do is they still were like, "Look, we know you can write, but you've been out of this for 10 years. We just want a little more. We want to see a little more. So we're wondering if you're willing to do this freelance stuff for us." And I said, "Yeah, of course." And that was what I was aiming for in the first place. And so the point, and 2 months later, they did offer me a full-time job. And I had 16 years of journalism as a career. The point was, I was so scared in that moment. And I don't know what my future would have looked like if I hadn't done it, but I knew what it wouldn't look like if I decided that fear was going to envelop me the way it had on that football field 20 years earlier. And the reason I was able to have the 16 years I had was because in that one moment, I was willing to go ahead and take my shot. There you have it. Just like Allison, I chose to use the word shot at the end. If Hamilton had existed then, I might have conjured up some memory of remembering that song. I'm not throwing away my shot in that. That is the end for our stories. However, I do want to invite Nessa and Janae and Jose and Priya to tell us any more. Tell us again about anything that you have to offer. Let's start with Nessa and Janae. If you can just remind us again of what's coming up and where to find your information, we would love it.
Yeah, our next Out Loud Story Slam kind of broadcast will be this coming Monday at 7 p.m. on KSQM, so 91.5 FM. And I think you guys will get it out there, maybe not. And then if not,
Sure.
KSQM FM live, or you can find it on our Facebook. It will be there soon. If you search Out Loud Story Slam and website, yeah, outloudstoryslam.com.
Yeah, and I did listen to enough to know that it does live stream. So hopefully you can all listen to it as it happens. And if not, you're working on making it recorded later too.
Yeah, it will be available recorded later on our Facebook page for sure. I think our last one is on there. If you missed it, hindsight in 2020. Yeah.
All right, Jose and Priya, do you have anything else before we check out for tonight?
I think I cut off, but if you have anything to ask to the library, go to caral.org and then go to email contact, and then you can shoot us an email through our service like Leave Answers. So if you have any questions on regard how to reset your library password, issues with your library card or whatever, let us know. Every day there's a librarian connected and is ready to answer any of your requests. So thank you very much, Steve, and everybody.
So Nessa and Janae and Doug and Allison and Ian, thank you so much for your participation tonight. I am honored that anybody is willing to step up and tell stories for this. And I have, again, as I said before, I have all the confidence in the world that once we're able to gather again, we'll be able to. One more thing I will say about the shot. I just learned yesterday that the first shot, everybody feels fine. The second shot, it knocks a few people down. They're down for the count for a day or two, and at least tired and that. So I don't say that to scare anybody, but I just learned this, and apparently everybody else already knew this. So I'm just sharing what I've learned. Thank you all for joining us. We will see you next month when the theme is Take a Hike. Love you all. Keep in touch, but keep your distance. I look forward to hearing your story. And the YouTube part.